Alan said, "I've been watching here for the last several months." Frank said, "Deputy Smith, thank you. I wondered who was parking over. There she is." They stood silent as Vivian walked home. When she entered her home, Frank said, "Deputy Smith, you know, she likes you a lot. She talks about you incessantly." Alan replied, "No. I didn't know. But I'm glad that she might trust me. Frank, if there is ever a need, just call me. Okay?" Frank replied, "Yeah, okay, thanks. Good night." And he walked back to the truck stop. Alan and Jane went back home and relaxed. Ty called in sick the next day, and so Jane partnered with Alan for the day. Amber had asked for a day off for a doctor's appointment, so Jane and Alan made up Unit Charlie 1. Unit Charlie 1 was tasked with patrolling Mountain View. As they drove through the streets of the town, the radio sounded, "Unit Charlie 1, silent alarm at the bank. Handle code 1040, no lights or siren." Jane replied, 10-4. They arrived at the back door of the bank, and they entered the bank president's office. The bank had recently installed a video monitoring system, and the monitor was installed in the president's office. Alan told Jane to call 10105, need backup. She hurried out and relayed the call, "Dispatch, Unit Charlie 1, 10105. 3 perps armed with assault weapons in main lobby of bank. Unit MV03, observing situation on bank monitor system." A voice replied, "It was Sheriff Murdoch, Unit Charlie 1, stand fast. I'll be right there with backup unit." Jane replied, 10-4. She returned to the president's office and Alan. She started to give Alan the message, when she noted that one perp was pointing to the video camera, shouting. One of the perps grabbed Vivian and began to back out of the bank. Alan turned, ran out of the back door, around the bank to see the 3 would-be bank robbers exiting the building. The robbers had lowered their weapons and were turning the run to the getaway car when Alan shot the one holding Vivian. Vivian dropped to the pavement and stayed quiet. Alan quickly shot one of the other 2 robbers. Jane had been right behind Alan and she shot the 3rd robber. No one was dead, just wounded. Alan signaled to Jane to care for Vivian as he went to the 3 robbers, made them lie on the sidewalk face down with hands behind their backs. Vivian was in tears, babbling her thanks to Jane and Alan. "You two have saved me from some terrible people, again. I owe you my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Jane just held Vi close and rocked her and whispered quietly, "Everything is okay. Everything is okay." When the sheriff arrived, Alan and Jane told him what had happened and why. Sheriff Murdoch said, "As of now, you 2 are on paid administrative leave until the shooting investigation is completed. Turn in your patrol car, sign out and go home." Alan and Jane were on their way home and Jane started sobbing. "Alan, I've never shot anyone before." Alan pulled over to the side of the street, took Jane in his arms and whispered loving and reassuring words. Holding her close, she cried and then smiled at Alan, "Let's go home." As they entered their house, she turned and said, "Captain Smith, I need to be held." Alan took her in his arms, "Officer Smith, so do I." They kissed and went into the living room, sat on the couch and just held on to each other. Jane looked into Alan's eyes, "Vivian is in love with you. Did you know that?" Alan replied, "Yeah, Frank told me the other night." She said, "Alan, if anything ever happens to me, you have my permission to pursue Vivian." Alan looked at Jane, "What are you talking about? You're my wife, you're young, beautiful, healthy, strong, and my soulmate. Nothing is going to happen to you. I will not allow anything to happen to you. I won't allow it." Jane giggled a little, "I won't allow it, either." Then they turned on the TV and surfed a little, then turned the TV off and started to play a little gin rummy. Being on administrative leave was boring. Alan smiled at Jane, "Tell me why you think I should pursue Vivian if anything happens to you." She replied, "Well, I know that she loves you, she respects you, and she is the nicest, most beautiful girl in the county. Just the kind of woman you deserve. She works hard and she deserves a man like you." Alan thought, and then asked Jane, "Sweetheart, why did this even come up? You're not hiding anything from me, are you?" Jane replied, "My mother and my older sister both died of ovarian cancer at about my age. I saw Susan yesterday and she put me through some tests. I'm waiting for the results." "Alan, I'm scared." Alan took her in his arms, "Why didn't you say something? I'm here for you. I can't do anything about whatever test results come back, but I can love you and pray for you." Tears welled up in his eyes, "I need you. I'll call the sheriff and ask that we be permanent partners, so we can always be together." Waiting for the test results was excruciating. Day after day they waited, hoped, prayed, and worried. Then as Alan and Jane patrolled the highway from Mountain View to the interstate, the radio crackled, "Charlie 1, dispatch, Sheriff Murdoch has said for you to return to the office. Jane looked at Alan, but replied, 10-4. She asked Alan to stop a minute. Alan, please hold me. He took her in his arms, kissed her, and tried to reassure her. She was shaking. I'm scared. Alan put his arm around her and started back to the office. When they arrived at the sheriff's office, Sheriff Murdoch was waiting for them. In my office, you too. In the sheriff's office, he pointed to the chairs. Sit. Then taking his own seat, Sheriff Murdoch smiled. I have a request from the community college in Henry County that you two along with Amber and Ty talk to the students there about being police officers, what it's like being a married teen, single officer, and a member of a team with your family outside the department. What do you think? Jane smiled. Is that all? Thank God. Sheriff Murdoch was puzzled. I don't understand, Alan said. Jane and I are waiting for some test results to come back. She is afraid that she might contract ovarian cancer like her mother and older sister. The sheriff responded, is this why you wanted to be partners? Jane answered, yes. We want as much time together as possible. I was afraid that you had called us back because Susan had gotten the test results, and it was bad news. Then Jane asked, may I call Susan? About that time the sheriff's phone rang. Jane grabbed it and answered, Sheriff's office, Officer Smith speaking. On the other end Jane heard Susan's voice. Jane, I'm glad it's you. I have your test results, everything is alright, except they found you have a yeast infection. Stop by the pharmacy, I've called in a prescription for you. Take it twice a day for 2 weeks and make an appointment to see if everything is cleared up. Jane said abruptly, what about Alan? Susan replied, he has a prescription too. Jane looked at the sheriff, and he stepped out of the office. She said, quietly, do we have to abstain? Susan replied, maybe for the first 3 days, then if you wash before and after, everything should be okay. Jane started to cry with relief. Thank you, Susan. Susan answered, you're welcome. But given your family history, I think we should meet about every 6 months, just to stay on top of the possibility of cancer. I'll send you a postcard when I want to see you again. Jane thanked her and hung up. The sheriff returned and spoke. I think, with everything going on right now, I'll just send Amber and Ty. You two have enough on your plate. Go back to work. Alan smiled at Jane. 7? She replied, at the truck stop. The sheriff said, you two have taken 7 at the truck stop every day for the past 3 weeks. What's going on? Is it something I should know about? Alan answered, it's more than 3 weeks. It's Vivian, we've had to watch over her at lunchtime and when she would walk home at night. The sheriff asked, what's going on? Jane replied, Vivian is very young, beautiful, and innocent. The truckers keep hitting on her, and trying to grope her. We have made it our mission to protect her. The sheriff thought, I didn't realize there was a problem. Maybe I'll ask every team to take 7 at the truck stop while she's on duty. Maybe I'll take Amanda there for lunch. Alan nodded, yeah. An innocent police presence just might be the ticket. Alan and Jane drove to the truck stop and entered. As they entered, Vivian ran over, hugged them and took them to their usual table and took their order. As they watched, a young trucker reached out to grab her bottom, and Alan stood, keep your cotton pickin' hands off her. The trucker spun around and spotted Alan standing, looking directly at him. Sorry, officer, Alan shouted, she is the one who should get your apology, not me. The young fellow sheepishly apologized to Vivian and turned around and hung his head. Jane walked over to him. Just a word, we don't like being manhandled, not by you or anyone else. Just remember, you would look just as good as you do now in an orange jumpsuit. Get my drift? The guy nodded his head and got up, left a $20 tip, paid his bill and left. Shelley put her arm around Vivian. You've got some terrific friends there. Vivian smiled at Shelley. Yes, I do. They're wonderful. It seems like they're always around when I need help. Shelley replied, let me tell you a secret. When I was young and beautiful like you, I had a protector too. Vi asked, who? Shelley answered, Sheriff, then Officer John Murdoch. I wish I knew then what I know now. Vi asked again, what do you know? Shelley dropped her head. John was in love with me and I blew him off. Now look at me, he's married to Amanda and I'm an old maid. Vivian answered, Alan's married. He seems to be very happy. I might become an old maid too. The manager yelled, you two better get back to work. And so, back to work. Sheriff Murdoch and Amanda entered and walked over to Alan and Jane's table. Well, how things here? Jane replied, Vivian had one young fellow try to grope her, but we took care of that. If we keep this up, maybe the guys who come here regularly just might get the hint. The sheriff nodded, a regular police presence might do the trick. 3 months later, Sheriff Murdoch assigned Charlie 1 to conduct an assembly at the elementary school, the junior high, and the high school. The emphasis at the elementary school was not to go with strangers, not to frighten the children, just to teach them to be alert. At the junior high the emphasis was drugs and loyalty. At the high school the emphasis was drugs, loyalty, and service to the nation, state, county, and town. In all three Jane talked to the girls, encouraging them to strive to be their very best. They could be anything they wished: doctors, police officers, firefighters, soldiers, or a mom who would stay at home to care for her children. Anything they wanted, they could be. They just had to work hard, get good grades, and never give up, never surrender. Charlie 1 received accolades from the school's teachers and administration. The superintendent asked the sheriff if Captain and Officer Smith could do the assemblies the next year too. Sheriff Murdoch told Alan and Jane about the request and they said that they would do it. Henry County heard about the assemblies and asked Sheriff Murdoch if Charlie 1 would do them for Henry County. The sheriff asked Charlie 1 and they agreed. At the appointed time, Charlie 1 arrived and conducted the assemblies, which were well received by the children and the adults as well. Alan and Jane met with Sheriff Ken and they asked the sheriff about their department, female officers, female firefighters, female doctors, and women in other professions. Alan planned to have female professionals give a short talk about opportunities for girls, the hardships, work, and rewards. Sheriff Kent said that he would check it out for the next year's assemblies. Alan had already begun to assemble female professionals for Mountain View school assemblies the next year. Later, as Charlie 1 patrolled the town of Mountain View, something appeared wrong in the tea shop. Alan and Jane stopped and went into the tea shop. Everything seemed to be okay, but Jane felt that something was still wrong. She turned and asked the cashier if everything was all right. The cashier nodded yes, but mouthed, "Help." Alan caught that, and said, "Well, everything's okay." "Jane, let's have a cup of tea," Jane said. "Okay." But Alan nodded to the kitchen area. As Alan and Jane approached the kitchen, everyone in the shop laid down on the floor. Both officers drew their sidearms and Alan hit the kitchen door like a football lineman, Jane right behind him. The man on the other side of the door was knocked to the ground and the knife in his hand flew across the kitchen. The lady in the kitchen silently pointed to the door to the cellar and got down on the floor. Alan motioned Jane to stand on one side of the door as he took up his position on the other side. "There is no place for you to go. This is the only way out. We are not coming in, we will just sit here until you starve to death." A voice from the other side of the door, "I give up. I'm coming out." The door slowly opened. Then the door slammed against the wall. Alan saw the barrel of a pistol and he hit the gun with all his strength. He reached in and grabbed the guy by his shirt and threw him onto the floor. "What's his pistol?" Jane grabbed and cuffed his right wrist and twisted it around and she cuffed his other wrist. Alan watched, amazed. That was the smoothest thing I have ever seen. "Honey, you are an amazing cop." He threw his cuffs to her and pointed to the other guy on the floor. She cuffed him as well. The lady in the kitchen ran to hug Jane and Alan. "Thank you, Jane, thank you, Alan." Alan and Jane took the two would-be robbers to the sheriff's office, and booked them. The sheriff came out and congratulated them, and told them to make out their report and to sign out and go home. Things were very quiet in Mountain View County during the winter. Snow accumulation was about 3 feet. The temperature never got above 26 degrees from the middle of October until April the next year. The city and county snow plows kept the streets and road fairly clear, but there were still quite a few fender benders, keeping the sheriff's office busy. Nothing to get excited about until April 1st, April Fool's Day. Alan and Jane had gone to their usual spot to keep an eye on Vivian's walk home, when Vivian was assaulted a block from her home. Alan had been waiting in the bush and Jane was in their car watching when a figure darted out from the side of one of the intervening houses and grabbed Vivian from behind. Jane got out of the car and Alan dashed out from the bush to catch the assailant before he could injure Vivian. Vivian had been thrown into the snow as Alan punched her assailant. Jane ran to help Vivian up and into her home, then Jane went back to help Alan with the assailant. Come to find out that her attacker was a young trucker that had tried to get chummy with her in the truck stop. She had rebuffed him and he decided that she needed to be taught a lesson. When Alan and Jane took him and booked him, he tried to assault Jane, but she used her Vulcan nerve pinch and then locked him up in a cell. Alan and Jane took a little time to fill out their report, and then they went home, satisfied that they had done their job. Summer was hectic. Vagrants, homeless, wanders, thieves, and assorted random violence seemed to be the fare of the day. Jane had taught the department her Vulcan nerve pinch, and everyone started calling it Jane's gentle loving touch. As Charlie 1 patrolled the town of Grace, an uneasy feeling came over Jane. She pointed to the gas station. "Alan, something's wrong. Stop here, we need to walk over to the gas station quietly." With that, the two officers got out of the patrol car and walked up to the side of the station. The station office was an old building with cracks in the walls, so Alan tried to peek through one of those cracks. What he saw made his blood run cold. Two young men were in the station holding guns on three small children. Alan recognized the kids. They were the children of the cashier in the station. Alan signed Jane to back off a bit. Then he told her what he saw. It didn't look good. They thought about it for a while. Then Alan said that he would trade himself for the mom and her kids. With that, Alan walked to the front of the station and called to those inside, "Hey, you in there? This is Deputy Smith, come out with your hands in the air." They replied, "We got 3 kids and a broad in here, move toward us and they are dead." Alan could see and be seen and he shouted, "2 big losers got to hide behind kids and their mom. That's so lame. Tell you what, let them go and I'll be your hostage." How about that, a deputy sheriff instead of innocent kids and their mom? Alan could see them talking, lip-reading the one guy, "Man, we're so dead. That Deputy Smith is a really tough guy. Let's just give up." Alan could not hear or see the other guy. But the guy he could see was obviously rattled. He wanted out, but his buddy shot him in the head and shouted, "I'm not afraid of you, copper." Alan shouted, "Hey, you've been watching too many old gangster movies." The thief shouted back, "I just want to walk away from this, alive." Alan saw the guy grab a little girl, put his gun to her head. "I'm coming out. I'll kill this brat if you make any funny move at all," Alan said. "Watch. I'm going to set my gun on the ground and step away from it. You can then get to your car and leave peacefully, leaving the girl safely on the ground." The guy shouted, "Okay. Do it." Alan put his pistol on the ground and stepped away from it. With that, the guy dragged the little girl out of the office, into the sights of Officer Jane. The guy's eyes were on Alan and he didn't see Jane, who stepped up behind him and used Jane's gentle loving touch or her Vulcan nerve pinch, whichever you prefer, to paralyze him, reaching with her other hand to secure the man's weapon. The girl ran to her mother sobbing. The mother picked her up and she broke down sobbing too. Jane took the mom and her kids into the station office and had them all sit down and hug each other as she put her arms around the little family. Alan called the sheriff and told him what had happened. The sheriff called the coroner to meet Alan at the gas station in Grace. Alan had locked the remaining perp in the patrol car and went into the station office to be with the family and Jane. The sheriff and the coroner arrived and Alan and Jane resumed their patrol. Another evening, another time of watching Vivian get home safely, only this time her dad was with her. They both waved at Alan and Jane, smiling, and Vivian threw them a kiss. Alan and Jane got out of the car, walked over to Vivian and Frank. Frank said, "Vi wants me to walk her home these days. But we are so thankful to see you too." Vivian grabbed Jane and hugged her. She shyly approached Alan, so he hugged her and shook Frank's hand. "See you tomorrow evening. Good night." As they walked back to the car, Jane smiled at Alan. "Captain Alan Arthur Smith, that was okay, just remember you belong to me." Alan chuckled, "I will always remember that I am yours, but don't forget, you belong to me." When they got home, Alan took Jane in his arms and sang, "I got you, babe." But he didn't sound anything like Sonny Bono, and Jane didn't sound anything like Cher. "I got you, babe." They laughed and decided to go to bed.